It's the Water River Authority's 57th anniversary, and we have here to have a conversation with us Erasmus Kalitsi. He's one of, you can call him one of the founding fathers of the Water River Authority. In fact, his staff ID was 003, the third person to be employed at the Water River Authority. But before then, he had actually done some work for the project itself, which was the building of the Akosombo Dam. He's going to be telling us all about it. He comes with a lot of institutional memory. Indeed, he's just about the only surviving person from that crop of people who started Water River Authority. Thank you for making time to join us, Mr. Kalitsi.
Thank you.
All right. And I was talking about how you happen to be, what number, your staff ID was 003. Tell us about those times, how you came into VRA.
I would say I was working on the Volta project in the Development Commission.
Right.
When the Volta Secretariat was established. And I moved with my files, and a number of senior officers were appointed to constitute the Volta River Project Secretariat. And it was that secretariat which was converted into the Volta River Authority. And the first person on the list was Frank Dobson, who was the chief executive, and the second was Herbert Winful, who was our boss at the time, and I was number 3. That's how the number came.
All right, so, and well, you became chief executive. In fact, the chief executive that also was the board chair.
Yes, that is correct. As far as the Volta River Project is concerned, I've played all kinds of roles.
Okay.
As I was telling you earlier, I was working on the planning phase of the Volta project in the Development Commission before the Volta Secretariat was established, out of which the Volta project was emerged. I had played many roles, first from the planning stage to the establishment of the authority itself. I, at the beginning, was working on the economic and financial end. And then from there, I was asked to undertake the resettlement of the people flooded. Then I became a finance director, and then also in '71 I became a deputy chief executive with responsibility for everything non-engineering.
All right.
That meant that I had all the administrative functions, and I also had responsibility for all the developments on the lake. Then I went out of the authority for a short time, went to the World Bank and the Volta and the Commonwealth Secretariat, returned and became managing director of Electricity Company of Ghana.
Oh.
For 3.5 years. And then from there, I was again appointed chief executive of the Volta River Authority for, I think it was 8 years or so, 8.5 years or so. And then from there, I became chairman of the VRA board when I retired as chief executive. So that's the progression.
You've essentially been through all the elements, and in fact also being the managing director of ECG2 at a point. Now, let's go back to how you became or came into VRA. What was your background?
I was a colonial district commissioner. We called it government agent.
This is pre-independence.
That's right. This was pre-independence. And I served in Accra, Ho, Keta. I took the salute at Sogankofe when we got independence. I took the salute, brought down the Union Jack, and raised the flag of Ghana. Then I continued. I served in Kumasi, in Gosu, and then finally in Sunyani,
right,
where I was the last of that breed. Thereafter, political district commissioners were appointed by the government, and I was assigned to the to the Development Commission, which then had responsibility for the Volta project. So that's how I got involved in the Volta project.
Does it mean you didn't have an engineering background?
No, my college training, academic training was in economics.
Okay. All right. So now let's come to the establishment of the Volta River Authority. It was established by the Volta River Development Act. What was it supposed to do? What was envisioned at the time?
Kwame Nkrumah, when he came to Ghana, his great ambition was to industrialize this country. And it was quite clear to him and to a whole lot of people that you could not industrialize a country without electricity. And studies had taken place which identified a gorge on the Volta River, and again we had bauxite resources in the country.
All right.
So the idea was to develop the Volta River, extract electricity out of it, to set up an aluminium industry in the country. This set in motion a whole lot of activities. It was extremely difficult. The British government was interested at the beginning, but eventually they developed cold feet. When the studies were showing increasing costs. Again, at that very time also, at the beginning, the British were interested because they wanted aluminium they had no source of aluminium at the time, after the war.
Yeah.
But then eventually they began to find one or two places where they could develop aluminium. Then the British, also looking at their own experience developing big projects, became a little uneasy. Ghana, or Kwame Nkrumah, was pressing for independence, and they were not very sure that the country or that they would want to support
a rebel in quotes.
That's right. So So there was a period when things were extremely difficult. Aluminium companies showed a lot of interest at the beginning, but in the end, they all began to move in a rather unsure manner.
Okay.
They were unsure about what they want. Whether they wanted to develop. But Kwame Nkrumah was determined that we should develop we should generate electricity from the Volta River for purposes of industrialization. And of course, bauxite being available, being the biggest potential consumer of electricity. This is how we got involved.
What was the reasoning behind adding all these other duties and functions to it? The lake transport, the irrigation, the health bit, making the health bit a responsibility, the health of the people in the catchment area responsibility of VRA. Why did they add all those?
Well, when you create a reservoir, which is about 3.5%, takes in about 3.5% of the surface area of Ghana, you interrupt the movement of people, the normal functioning of the society is interrupted. And so, and then you create opportunities, say for water transport, you create opportunities for water transport to bring the northern rural, northern areas of the country which are rural in nature to the south, which is
urban,
relatively
urban.
Commercialized
and
developed, to tie them together. So you needed to promote, not necessarily directly undertake. You were not prevented from undertaking, but you had to promote, to ensure that that water is not just left like that. Now the people were removed, 80,000 people were removed from the reservoir area. They had their own lands, they were living their own lives, they had their own customs, they had their own tribal structures and whatnot.
Probably their own shrines.
They had their own shrines also. And then you go disturb them. It is true that we carried out a substantial amount of consultation, but no amount of consultation would satisfy people. 57 years after the formation of the Volta Lake, the people are still complaining that they have not had a fair deal. So you can't just create a situation like this without assuming responsibility for ensuring that you get the best out of, that you get the best for people.
Yeah. So I can imagine that the Akosombo Hospital would be one of the welfare schemes that you put in place to support the people.
Yes, the Akosombo Hospital was built to provide health facilities for the VRA employees, the Akosombo Hospital, and for that matter, other VRA health facilities. In wherever VRA operates, it tries to build a little health facility. But the Akosombo Hospital in particular was built to provide the VRA staff with health facilities and services, and also to provide similar services for people around the reservoir, in the areas around the reservoir.
All right. And let's look at the strategies that VRA put in place. One of the things I find quite exciting, actually, before we come to the strategies, is the work culture at VRA. The fact that you have some of the finest engineers ever in this country. How were you able to pull it off?
I would say the authority tried as much as possible to recruit from the best, to recruit the best they could. To start with, we had only one engineering institution in Ghana, UST. So people were sent there to interview them. This is done by many, I mean, the oil industry, for example, when it was starting, even from Nigeria, they sent people right around the universities to recruit people. The VRA did that also. The VRA drew upon the old electricity department. Some staff there were recruited into VRA. But the VRA sent 8 staff, new as well as some of the old, to very good universities, the top universities, to study.
Yeah.
And then those working were attached, or the same people were attached to various institutions, utilities, to learn the trade, get exposed to what other people are doing, get the best practices, and then with good management. That's how it was done. Yeah. Models were found in a number of institutions like Ontario Hydro, Tennessee Valley Authority, and a number of others. British Columbia Hydro, they all worked with us. Some of our people went on attachment to them. Some came to work with us. Yeah.
What would be some of the achievements of the Water River Authority?
Well, we were able to build and operate a huge power facility and to supply an extremely demanding customer like an aluminium company. The problem with aluminium and similar type of production is that you interrupt supply to them for just a few, for a day or two, or even a few hours, and the cost is tremendous. The cost is tremendous because, say in the case of Varco, a very short interruption and the pots would freeze. And when the pots freeze, it would take them a long time to warm up the pot for production. In the meantime, the products lost would constitute a cost to the company.
Yeah.
And the agreements were made in such a way that VRA was expected to provide continuous, uninterrupted supply to an aluminium company like that. I think there is on record a situation when there was an interruption, and the cost. This happened after one of the coups, and the cost which was associated with that interruption ran into a few millions of dollars. You know, you have this kind of situation. You are required by contractual arrangements to provide a certain quality of supply. You deviate from that, and you create grief for your for your customer, and you create grief for your finances also. You take the mines, for example. At every point in time, there will be a large number, there will be a certain number of people. In fact, I believe a large number of people who would be underground digging for gold. And so agreements we made with the mines would say that the mines should retain their own standby equipment. For all practical purposes, many of them don't. So you have the responsibility, or you at least, as a big business, you do not want to get the story of people dying underground. Fortunately, we've got these things in South Africa. We haven't got many experiences of people dying underground in Ghana.
Okay.
Because we try to ensure that the electricity for these people is kept. If you can achieve VRA standards, the quality of supply to the mines would be excellent. At the beginning, the mines were not interested to get volta power. But then, when they got familiar with what they could get, they stopped maintaining their own generating equipment. Okay. So the question is, how can we have been able to? I would say that it was also good that we earned foreign currency. And we did not dissipate the foreign currency. We applied the foreign currency we earned to the purposes for which the foreign currency was earned. We paid our debts. We didn't have a situation where banks would be refusing us
letters of credit.
Letters of credit. They were even chasing us, because I remember Exim Bank, one of their managing directors at one time was telling us that our credit was even better than the credit of the government of Ghana. And so, you know, the banks were ready to do business with us because because we could keep to the rules very strictly. That was one of the philosophies we had, that we would maintain strict adherence to rules and regulations of society and not permit deviations. You would find that we've had stories of malpractices all over, but if you think of the size of what we had to manage and the period within which all this has been done, and the fact that most of the work was done by Ghanaians, you see that we could have achieved a record of malpractices. But no, on the other hand, people would come from other places and commend us.
I want to learn from you.
Yeah.
No. What would have been some of the challenges you encountered during the period?
Challenges, I would say that we have to face, as we're growing older, we found that it would be necessary for us to adapt our way of doing things to meet national objectives in the power business. At the beginning, for example, we were dependent upon a customer who paid us in foreign currency. That meant that we had protection in that area. But at the same time, what we paid, what was paid, the tariff, the VRA tariff, was not what we were very happy with, and we went into several periods of negotiation with VRA. So that was our major challenge. How to improve the VRA tariff. Secondly, I would say that we flooded a large area, and the people whose lands we took, up till today, they are complaining that we are not looking after them well. So I'll say tariff and then the land issue for the locals.
So it's been, some 57 years.
Yeah.
What does the future look like for VRA?
What is the future of VRA? I would say that it will depend on what government, what support government is able to give to the authority. It's important that we should lower the cost of electricity, and also implement a cost reflective tariff. That is very important.
Yeah.
If you don't, you are dead. I don't think it is VRA's business to irrigate the Accra Plains, but you can't have this reservoir and forget Kwame Nkrumah's idea that the Accra Plains should be developed to be a bread basket for Accra. Then right now, VRA does not operate because they can't afford the electricity prices. I think we should revive VRA, but try to lower the cost of electricity, but this time let VRA use Ghana bauxite. Then I think we should also enhance water transport. These, for me, are the directions which I think we should move into.
Thank you very much, Mr. Erasmus Kalitsi, for these insights. We really appreciate you.
Thank you.